The year is 1815, France, and our story starts in a prison. Picture this: a bunch of convicts are out there, literally hauling a massive ship with thick ropes. Watching over them is Javert, a very stern, rigid officer, a stickler for the rules. When the work is done, Javert orders one specific prisoner, Jean Valjean, to fetch the ship's flag. Everyone's eyes practically pop out of their heads when Jean, with his absolutely incredible strength, tears the entire mast out of the ground and drops it at Javert's feet. Javert then tells him his parole is beginning. But here's the kicker: Javert never calls him by his name. He only uses his prisoner number. Why was Jean in jail? Years ago, he had stolen a loaf of bread for his sister's starving child. The sentence: 5 years. But his attempts to escape turned that into a whopping 19 years. Jean feels free, but Javert's voice is chillingly cold. "This isn't freedom," he says. "It's parole." He hands Jean some papers he must carry everywhere, or he'll be instantly arrested again. Jean leaves the prison walls, but the outside world is no better. No one will give him work. Everyone treats him like a dangerous criminal. He's even chased away when he tries to sleep in a stable. Exhausted, starving, and defeated, he wanders into a church. There, he meets a kind bishop. The bishop feeds him and gives him a bed for the night. But in the dead of night, Jean Valjean, still the desperate man, steals all the church's silver and runs off. The next morning, the police catch him and drag him back to the church. But everyone is stunned when the bishop lies, saying, "No, I gave these to him as a gift." And not only that, he also hands Jean the two most valuable items, the silver candlesticks. This moment of pure, selfless mercy breaks Jean Valjean. He realizes that until now, his life has only known hate and punishment. But the bishop has shown him a new path. Right then, he tears up his parole papers and decides to start a new life with a new identity. 8 years later, the factory, Fantine, and Javert's return. Fast forward 8 years. Jean Valjean is now a respected factory owner and the town mayor under a new name. But his factory foreman is a bully, constantly harassing the female workers, especially a young woman named Fantine. The other women, jealous and cruel, start to despise Fantine. One day, they sneak a look at a letter she has. They read it and discover Fantine has an illegitimate daughter named Cosette. This is all the ammunition they need. They mock her and call her terrible names, escalating the fight. Just then, the factory owner, Jean Valjean, now the mayor, arrives to calm things down. But as he looks out the window, he freezes. Standing there is Javert, who is now the police chief of this very town. Jean is momentarily panicked, and instead of handling the dispute himself, he nervously leaves the matter to the foreman. The foreman and the women immediately start tormenting Fantine again, insulting her for having an illegitimate child. Fantine sobs, trying to explain she's not a bad woman, just one who loved a man who abandoned her. But the foreman is vile to her. When Fantine slaps him, he retaliates in a rage and fires her. Poor Fantine tries to beg Jean for help, but the foreman physically throws her out of the factory. Meanwhile, Jean is distracted. He hears a commotion outside, but the police are all around the factory. Javert, the new police chief, is there with some official papers. He doesn't quite recognize Jean, but something about his face is naggingly familiar. Suddenly, a cry rings out. A man is pinned under a heavy cart. Jean, without a second thought, rushes out and, using that old, incredible strength, saves the man. Javert's suspicion is now fully aroused. He remembers an escaped convict from 8 years ago who had exactly that kind of strength. No evidence yet, so he says nothing. Now, innocent and jobless, Fantine is desperate to earn money for her daughter. First, she sells her locket. Then, she cuts off and sells her beautiful hair. She even sells some of her teeth. She's forced into the most miserable life, selling herself on the street just to send money to her little girl Cosette. The pain, the exposure, the brutal life on the streets all start to take a terrible toll on her health. Her life is sinking into darkness. One night, Fantine has a confrontation with a rough customer. He's abusive, and when she defends herself, he calls the police. Javert arrives and begins to arrest her. Then Jean Valjean appears. As he looks at Fantine, he remembers. He recognizes the woman he let his foreman fire. Fantine breaks down in tears, crying that he threw her out and now her daughter Cosette is very sick. Jean is overwhelmed with guilt. A heart full of remorse, he lifts the sick woman up, takes her to the hospital, and makes her a promise. He will look after Cosette and give her a good life. At this time, Javert receives a letter from Paris. It says, "The fugitive convict he's been hunting for years has finally been caught." Javert immediately goes to Jean Valjean and admits his mistake, confessing that he was wrong to suspect him. He even says he deserves punishment for his error. Jean, however, forgives him, saying he only did his duty. But Jean's heart is heavy. He knows an innocent man is going to jail in his place. He wrestles with this all night, and in the morning he decides he must tell the truth. He goes to the court and reveals his true identity, even his prisoner number, but no one believes him. "Ask Javert," he insists. "He knows who I am." But before he can be heard, the guards pull him out. He rushes back to the hospital, where Fantine is gravely ill, feverish, and seeing hazy visions of her daughter. Jean takes her hand and says, "Don't worry, I will care for Cosette. I will give her a good life." Fantine's eyes fill with peace, and she finally passes away. In that very moment, Javert arrives, determined to arrest Jean Valjean. Jean refuses to submit, grabbing a wooden plank to defend himself, while Javert draws his sword. They struggle, but the trained officer is too much for Jean. Jean is disarmed and, in a desperate move, jumps into the river to escape. Meanwhile, Fantine's daughter Cosette is living at an inn run by Monsieur and Madame Thénardier. But the truth is, Cosette isn't sick. The Thénardiers treat her like a servant, lying to Fantine to get more money. They are awful to her while raising their own daughter like a princess. The Thénardiers are a greedy, deceptive pair. They get their customers drunk to easily steal their valuables. Their food is atrocious. They even sometimes use street cats to cook. That very night, Jean Valjean arrives at the inn. He gently tells Cosette that her mother, Fantine, is gone and she must come with him. But the Thénardiers put on a show. They claim to love Cosette like their own and have spent a fortune on her illness. Jean sees through their act. The sight of the money is all it takes. The Thénardiers happily hand Cosette over. Jean and Cosette leave together. A little later, Javert shows up and tells the Thénardiers he's looking for the fugitive, Jean Valjean. The Thénardiers are furious. If only they had known he was an escaped convict, they would have extorted even more money from him. As Jean and Cosette approach the city gate, the police are checking all the carriages. The pair panic and bolt. Javert is right behind them, shouting Jean's prisoner number. Jean uses his immense strength once more, grabbing a rope, scaling a high wall, and pulling Cosette up with him. They hide until Javert gives up the search. They eventually hide in a church where they meet a man. Jean is terrified, thinking it's over, but he discovers this is the very man he saved from under the cart. The man, grateful, agrees to help Jean and Cosette and offers them shelter. Jean hopes that he and Cosette can finally start a new life far away. 9 years pass, and the scene shifts to Paris. Poverty is rampant, and the people are angry with the king's policies. Young students, the Friends of the ABC, are forming a revolutionary group to overthrow the monarchy, marching and stirring up the people. One of these young men is Marius, from a good family, now living in poverty. He's friends with the Thénardier's daughter, Éponine, unaware that she's secretly in love with him. One afternoon, as Jean and a now-grown Cosette are out helping the poor, Marius sees her. It's love at first sight. The Thénardiers are now living on the streets. They spot Jean and Cosette and immediately recognize them. Driven by greed, they and a gang of thugs surround Jean to extort money again. Jean tries to defend himself. Just then, Javert and his police team arrive and break up the fight. While Javert is busy scolding the thugs, Jean takes the chance and flees with Cosette. As they run, Cosette locks eyes with Marius, and they share a powerful connection. Later, after the police leave, Thénardier tells Javert that the man who escaped was the fugitive convict he's been looking for. Javert is now more obsessive than ever about catching Jean. Marius asks his friend Éponine to find out where Cosette lives. That night, Marius and the revolutionary group meet in a cafe to plot against the government. But Marius can only think of Cosette. His friends tease him, and Enjolras, the stern leader, scolds him for thinking of a girl when the country is in crisis. Then, news arrives. A government official known for helping the poor has died. The group is enraged and begins planning their uprising. At that moment, Éponine returns with Cosette's address, and Marius immediately rushes off to see her. Cosette, too, is constantly thinking of Marius. She feels isolated because Jean always keeps her hidden to protect their secret. She asks Jean about his past, but he refuses to tell her anything. After a small argument, Cosette goes to the garden and finds Marius waiting at the gate. They profess their love for each other. Eponine, watching from afar, is heartbroken. Suddenly, Jean arrives, ordering Cosette inside. Marius hides, but manages to grab Cosette's handkerchief as he goes. Just then, Thénardier and his gang show up, intending to capture Jean and claim the reward from Javert. Eponine, in a selfless act, screams to warn Jean and Cosette, forcing her father to slap her. The police siren sounds and the gang runs. Jean, thinking Javert has found them, decides to take Cosette and flee to England. Cosette begs him to stay, but he is resolute. Before leaving, Cosette leaves a small note for Marius at the garden gate, explaining everything. After an intense internal struggle, she hides the letter and lies to Marius, saying, "Cosette has vanished." A frantic Marius races to Cosette's house, but they are gone. He considers hunting for her, but is then reminded of his duty. His comrades are preparing for the revolutionary fight. He chooses his commitment to the revolution over his love. Eponine also disguises herself as a boy and joins the fight. Enjolras and his comrades prepare their weapons, inspiring people to join the revolution. The next day, Enjolras and Marius march in a funeral procession, singing songs of freedom and waving flags. The crowd swells, uniting to demand a better France. Javert is in the crowd, disguised as a revolutionary, spying on them. The king's soldiers block the way and suddenly open fire, killing an old woman. The situation explodes into a battle. Swords and bullets fly as people start building a barricade out of furniture and wood. Enjolras takes command and they build a strong defense. He needs someone to scout the enemy's plans. Javert, still pretending to be a rebel, steps forward. By nightfall, they have a solid wall across the street. Javert returns, trying to feed them false information. But the little street urchin, Gavroche, recognizes him. The rebels seize Javert. He tries to escape, injuring a few people, but Enjolras knocks him out. Suddenly, the soldiers attack, and a shower of bullets turns the street into a war zone. People on both sides fall. In the middle of the fighting, Marius is advancing with a barrel of gunpowder when a soldier takes aim at him. Eponine races forward and takes the bullet herself. She dies, but her sacrifice causes the soldiers to retreat. Marius is devastated, holding Eponine as he weeps. Before she dies, she hands him Cosette's hidden letter. Marius then writes his own note and gives it to Gavroche to take to Cosette. But when Gavroche reaches the door, he meets Jean Valjean, who takes the letter. Jean reads the depth of love and feeling in Marius's letter for Cosette. His heart melts. He resolves to protect his daughter's lover. Jean arrives at the barricade disguised as a soldier, so no one recognizes him. The rebels think he's a spy too, until he spots Javert tied up nearby. Gavroche vouches for Jean's truthfulness. When an enemy sniper appears on the roof, Jean warns everyone and helps the rebels shoot him down. They now trust him. Jean asks Enjolras to let him execute Javert. Given permission, he takes Javert into a secluded spot, but instead of killing him, he sets him free. Jean says he wants nothing in return, only to prove he's a good man. Javert flees, and Jean fires a shot in the air to make it look like he killed him. The next morning, the gunpowder is soaked from the rain, and they're running low on ammunition. The common people have returned home. Only the ABC rebels remain, but they decide to fight to the last breath. Little Gavroche is shot and killed while collecting bullets from the fallen soldiers. Jean picks up his body, and the rebels, enraged, fire back. This time, the soldiers use cannons. Slowly, all the rebels are killed. People slam their doors shut, refusing to let anyone in. Marius is wounded and falls. Jean, seeing his chance, lifts Marius onto his back and escapes through the sewers. Enjolras and the last few rebels are cornered and killed in an old house, Enjolras holding the flag until his last breath, a symbol of freedom. Later, as soldiers clean the area, Javert arrives and places his own medal on Gavroche's body. He realizes Jean is still alive because his body isn't there. He hears noises from the sewers. Down below, Jean is struggling with Marius's body, slipping in the vile water. They run into Thénardier, who is stealing Marius's ring. Jean grabs him and threatens to drown him unless he shows him the way out. Jean finally emerges with Marius, but Javert is waiting. Jean begs for 1 hour to get Marius to a hospital, promising to surrender afterward. Javert, threatened and torn by Jean's goodness, is overwhelmed by a moral conflict. He lets Jean go. Jean walks away, and Javert does not stop him. Broken by his inner turmoil, Javert walks to the river and jumps to his death. Some time later, Marius wakes up at his grandfather's house, unaware who saved him. When he learns his friends are dead, he returns to their hideout to mourn. Cosette finds him there and comforts him, promising to stay by his side. Jean watches from afar, knowing his presence will only cause trouble. Jean later gives Marius permission to marry Cosette and tells him the truth about his past, saying he must now disappear. Marius promises to keep Jean's secret from Cosette. Marius and Cosette marry, but Cosette is sad that her father isn't there. The Thénardiers show up in disguise at the wedding and try to blackmail Marius. They claim they saw his father-in-law in the sewers with a dead body and demand money to keep the secret. As proof, they show him Marius's own ring. Marius now understands. Jean saved his life. That night, Marius and Cosette rush to see Jean, who is near death. He's happy to see Cosette one last time and gives her a letter detailing his entire past. He dies peacefully. Cosette cries, but Jean's soul is now free, joining all the souls who died for a better France. And that is how the film ends.